Spoilt brat, isn't he? And he says that the king doesn't talk to him over this. Well, who can blame the king? That's just absolute nonsense.
Prince Harry's story, once a tale of royal privilege and public adoration, has spiraled into a saga of self-inflicted ruin, culminating in a devastating legal defeat on May 2, 2025, that laid bare his disconnection from reality. The Court of Appeal's unanimous verdict, delivered by 3 senior judges, was not just a rejection of his 5-year battle for taxpayer-funded police protection. It was a public dismantling of the narrative of victimhood that Harry had clung to so fiercely. What followed was not quiet reflection or acceptance, but an explosive BBC interview that revealed a man at war with his family, his country, and perhaps most tragically, himself. This moment marked not just the burning of the final bridge between Harry and the House of Windsor, but the complete unraveling of a prince who once embodied the charm and potential of the monarchy's future. To understand the depth of his fall, we must trace the arc of his journey, from the cocoon of royal privilege to the harsh realities of a life he chose but could not sustain. In February 2020, Harry's world was one of unparalleled security and status. Born into the heart of the British monarchy, he had never known a life without the full weight of the state's protection. This wasn't merely about bodyguards trailing him at public events. It was a meticulously orchestrated system involving armed police, advanced reconnaissance teams, and coordination between MI5, Scotland Yard, and international security services. Entire city blocks would be cordoned off for his appearances, air traffic rerouted, and emergency protocols activated to ensure his safety. This level of protection, costing British taxpayers millions annually, was reserved for a select few, those deemed strategic national assets. For Harry, it was more than physical safety. It was a symbol of his untouchable status as a senior working royal, a testament to the monarchy's enduring power and influence. This security wasn't just about protecting Harry as an individual. It was about safeguarding the institution of the monarchy itself. Every royal appearance was a carefully curated display of British soft power, with security arrangements designed to project an image of unassailable strength. Harry's protection detail was a visible reminder that any threat to a royal was a threat to the entire British establishment. He could travel the world, attend high-profile events, and meet global leaders, knowing that the government would move mountains to ensure his safety. This was the ordinary world Harry inhabited, a life of seamless privilege where every detail, from travel logistics to personal safety, was handled by a team of professionals whose sole purpose was to maintain his untouchability. But in February 2020, everything changed. When Harry and Meghan announced their decision to step back from senior royal duties, they believed they could retain the perks of royalty while shedding its responsibilities. They envisioned a life in California where they could build an independent brand while still enjoying the security, status, and access that came with their royal titles. What they failed to grasp was that royal protection wasn't a birthright. It was a benefit tied to their roles as working royals. The Ravik Committee, responsible for overseeing the security of public figures, made a decision that would upend Harry's world. His automatic, taxpayer-funded protection would be stripped, and any future security would be assessed on a case-by-case basis, dependent on specific threats and circumstances. For the first time, Harry faced the prospect of living like an ordinary citizen, responsible for his own safety and the costs associated with it. The golden cage of royal life had been opened, but the world outside was far less forgiving than he had imagined. The Court of Appeal's verdict on May 2, 2025 was a defining moment, not just in Harry's legal battle, but in his personal descent. Lords Justice Bean, Lady Justice McGowan, and Lord Justice Singh delivered a unanimous ruling that left no room for ambiguity. They rejected Harry's claim that the Ravik Committee's decision to downgrade his security was unfair, ruling that his grievances did not constitute grounds for judicial review. The judges found the committee's process to be rational, proportionate, and entirely within its authority. They noted that Harry had been given ample opportunity to present evidence of specific threats, but had failed to provide credible intelligence to justify taxpayer-funded protection. His royal status, far from being ignored, had actually afforded him more consideration than most individuals in similar circumstances. The court's findings were a comprehensive rejection of Harry's arguments, dismantling the legal foundation his team had spent 5 years constructing. What made this defeat so crushing wasn't just the legal outcome, but the way it exposed Harry's distorted perception of his situation. Instead of accepting the verdict with dignity, he immediately turned to the media, granting a BBC interview that revealed a man consumed by paranoia and entitlement. Within hours of the ruling, Harry was spinning a narrative of conspiracy, alleging that the royal household had infiltrated the Ravik Committee, that his family was deliberately endangering his life, and that the entire British establishment was aligned against him. This wasn't the measured response of someone grappling with a legal setback. It was the reaction of a man who genuinely believed the world was conspiring to harm him. His claims were not only baseless, but bordered on delusional, as he suggested that a cancer-stricken King Charles, his own father, was orchestrating a plot to manipulate him through security decisions. The court documents painted a stark picture of Harry's disconnect. His legal team had argued that the Ravik Committee failed to consider his unique circumstances and that the decision to remove his protection was influenced by improper factors. But the judges found no evidence of procedural unfairness, noting that Harry's reduced threat level justified the downgrade in security. They emphasized that his fears were speculative, unsupported by credible intelligence, and that his demand for permanent taxpayer-funded protection was unreasonable given his status as a non-working royal. The ruling was a humiliating rebuke, underscoring that Harry's sense of entitlement had no basis in law or reality. Yet Harry's response to this defeat was to double down on his victim narrative, a choice that revealed the depth of his psychological unraveling. In the BBC interview, he claimed that a representative of the royal household's presence on the Ravik Committee was evidence of foul play. To anyone familiar with royal protocol, this was not a revelation but a matter of common sense. Royal security decisions naturally involve input from the palace to ensure alignment with the monarchy's needs. But for Harry, this routine coordination was proof of a grand conspiracy. His rhetoric echoed the desperation of someone who could no longer distinguish between institutional procedure and personal betrayal. He spoke of his family's refusal to pick up the phone, comparing his isolation to that of Meghan's estranged father, Thomas Markle, a comparison that was as ironic as it was tragic. The fallout from Harry's interview extended beyond his legal defeat, exposing the crumbling financial foundation of his post-royal life. The $100 million Netflix deal, signed in 2020 with great fanfare, was set to expire in 2025, and the streaming giant was reconsidering its investment. Harry and Meghan's recent projects had flopped spectacularly. A Polo documentary showcasing Harry's interests barely registered with audiences, and Meghan's cooking show, Love Meghan, garnered a mere 12.6 million viewing hours in its first week, a far cry from the 81.5 million hours their 2022 documentary series achieved. Insiders reported that Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos, while a fan of Meghan, was contemplating a restructured deal with no upfront payment and potentially excluding Harry altogether. The message was clear. Meghan's lifestyle brand held commercial value, but Harry, whose appeal rested on royal revelations he had already exhausted, was becoming a liability. The financial strain was compounded by the collapse of their Spotify deal in 2023, which produced minimal content, and the struggles of their Archewell Foundation, which was losing donor support amid their growing controversies. Without the Netflix contract, their lavish Montecito lifestyle, complete with a sprawling mansion, private security, and a large staff, was becoming unsustainable. Royal experts warned that the couple was facing serious financial trouble, with Harry and Meghan reportedly reviewing investments, staff, and real estate in a bid to cut costs. This crisis exposed the fatal flaw in their exit strategy. They had assumed their royal brand would translate into endless earning potential, but without the monarchy's institutional support, their credibility was proving hollow. Harry's pleas for reconciliation with his family, timed suspiciously with these financial woes, were less about genuine remorse than a desperate attempt to salvage his crumbling empire. He spoke of the preciousness of life and his desire to reconnect with his father, but these sentiments rang hollow against the backdrop of years of public attacks on the royal family. King Charles, who had supported Harry and Meghan financially and emotionally in the early days of their departure, had reached his breaking point. The silence from the palace wasn't, as Harry claimed, a sinister plot, but a father protecting himself from a son who had weaponized private family moments for public gain. Similarly, Harry's relationship with his brother, William, and other senior royals like Kate and Queen Camilla had deteriorated beyond repair, with palace sources describing a united front against any reconciliation. They viewed Harry not just as a wayward family member, but as an active threat to the monarchy's stability.